Hey all, Baruch Halevi, Rabbi B here from Soul Centered. Thanks for tuning in. It's been a minute since I've shared some videos at Soul Centered. We have been continuously sending out blogs and lots of different podcasts. You can listen to it over at mysoulcenter.org. Got a lot of new stuff coming up and out. However, videos kind of been a little slow, so I'm excited to get back to you today. I want to share with you some ideas around a blog that just put up on the website and sending out little snippets of information all week long around this same topic. I didn't choose the topic chose me, which is often the case. And that is, some call them coincidences, others synchronicities, call it serendipity, whatever you want to call it. Doesn't matter what you call it. It matters whether or not you experience it or you're open to the experience of it. So often when I'm counseling people, we'll get into the ways that the soul, the spirit interacts with the world, and the world of spirit interacts with us. And can we live at a deeper, more spiritual place? Dr. Frankel, my teacher, calls it the noetic, but this place beyond soma, body, psyche, mind, emotions, this transcendent place. Are we open to it? Can we live our lives? What it was Albert Einstein who said either everything is a miracle or nothing is a miracle. Can we live as everything is a miracle? Can we suspend disbelief or doubt, which is something that everybody grapples with? And I'm going to do another talk on that. Can we open our eyes and see the possibilities? And so often, people are reminded of this in these synchronistic, seemingly coincidental, wow moments. I just had one a few days ago. This happened recently. I'm up in the morning, as I'm always doing, 5 a.m., like religiously, is getting up, and I have 4 kids, all of whom are home right now. So that's the only time the only time in my day that the house is quiet, and I need quiet to do this work. So I'll get up every morning religiously, and I'll grab my coffee, I'll journal, and then after journaling, I'll do some meditation on what I journal. Well, this particular morning, like 2 or 3 days ago, I was writing about signs and just kind of things I had been seeing or thinking, and asking God, excuse me, for signs. I almost sneezed. And just affirmations, reminders, because we all need them. And I think that that's can be the power of signs, though there's a danger in asking for signs too. So, anyways, I'm writing about this. I put down my pen. I go into meditation. Nothing really particular that morning, and I think nothing of it. And then I'm driving to school, taking my youngest Aviv to school. He's 10, almost 11, and he turns to me randomly and he says, "When we go to Disneyland, because we're taking them to Disneyland in the spring, I'm going to ask the people who work there random questions." I'm like, "Well, that's random unto itself. Why are you going to do that?" He said, "Because I just read, or I was listening to something that said Disney workers, people who work at Disney, are required," which is an interesting thing, "to answer your questions." I'm assuming relevant to Disneyland, but maybe you could ask them anything. Maybe they Google it. I don't know. But I'm assuming, and I think he was assuming, that you can ask them anything you want about Disneyland. So I said, "Well, what are you going to ask them?" He's like, "I don't know. Something random like, why are Mickey Mouse's ears so large?" I'm going to think for a moment. That's a really random but good question. If you're going to ask a random question to a Disneyland employee and they have to answer, why are Mickey Mouse's ears so large? Okay, interesting, but not necessarily worthy of a blog or your time on this video. And then we stop talking, push play on my car, my AirPlay, and it picks up where I had left off on an audiobook. I was listening to Rabbi Daniel Lapin's book on Thou Shalt Prosper, Creating Wealth from a spiritual perspective, which is fascinating to me. And literally the point we pick up, I don't know which chapter, I can look it up if you're interested. Maybe it's like 10. It was somewhere later in the book. The first words out of Rabbi Lapin's mouth are, "And that's the development of Mickey Mouse." I don't remember what he was talking about prior to that. That my son and I just like, huh? Like, are we on candid camera type what's going on here? And then he continues to say, Mickey Mouse originally looked like an adult, but what they were finding was, remember back in Steamboat Willie, I wasn't there, but back, I think it was the 30s when Mickey Mouse came to be, he was much slimmer, much more proportional to adult dimensions. And Rabbi Lapin talks about they morphed him into look more like a baby with larger head in ratio to the body. I guess that's a survival technique of a baby. And larger eyes, larger facial features to connect to their caretakers, and larger ears, all proportional to the body. But just he was going on and on about the development of Mickey Mouse. And my son and I are like, this is unbelievable. I mean, what are the odds of a random question, which my son and I have never had that conversation before. So a random conversation. My son proposes a random question, just popped into his head. Then we turn on this podcast in the middle of a random podcast. The book, I read the book literally 15 years ago in hard copy. I just happened to stumble upon it in my my Audible book. Then I happened to be listening to it. I happened to be at this spot, and he happened to be talking about Mickey Mouse, which really didn't have anything to do with wealth and prosperity. And it answered the exact question my son asked. Excuse me. My son and I are just staggered. My son turns to me and said, damn, I should have asked for something better, like a PlayStation. And I thought, yeah, that's so good, right? It's so true. Why did this happen? Because I think nothing monumental happened from that little coincidence, that synchronicity. But it was just this aha, this wow moment that reminded me, that reminded him. And by the way, he is much more in tune and connected with this stuff than I am. It was almost less of an aha for him as just oh yeah, that's how it works. I should have asked for a PlayStation. I should have, ask and you shall receive. I should have been more thoughtful and intentional in my request. But for me, it's damn, this is real. This stuff is real. I mean, it's just so easy to forget. And when you have these signs, these synchronicities that happen all the time, they're just there, I believe, to point us on the way. They're like breadcrumbs from the universe, leading us step by step. When I talk with clients, we talk about these signs, and it's very important not to get hung up on the asking for signs or waiting for signs. There's nothing wrong with it, but it can also be distracting because the signs are never enough. I don't know about you, but I'll get a sign like that and it starts to wear off like anything else. Teacher of mine, Dennis Prager, said the heavens could open, God could come through and give us the 10 Commandments, the most important document in Western history, and it's just unbelievable. Wow. And then the next day, the next week, the next month, or the next year, we'd be back to complaining that we want more, because that's what happens in the Bible. The Israelites are wowed and then they're complacent. And then they get this thing called manna, this bread, this substance from heaven to sustain them. And then they get to this point where, do you have anything up there besides manna? Like we could use some poultry. Quail is actually what they asked for to supplement our diet, right? Because the miracle is a wow. And then it becomes ordinary. And this is where the mystics really say we need to do the work, is to stop looking for the big signs, the big wows, and start seeing the wow in the now. And that's really the shift of mindfulness practice, of spirituality, of living a life that's extraordinary, is transforming that ordinary into the extraordinary. There's a great teaching by one of the founders of Jewish mysticism, the Baal Shem Tov, who says, if we were to walk in the woods and a spring appeared just when we became thirsty, we'd call it a miracle. And if on a second walk we became thirsty, just at that point again, the spring appeared, we'd remark on it as a coincidence. But if that spring were always there, we would take it for granted, cease to notice it. And that right there is the work of remembering that coincidence was really not happenstance and random. Coincidence from geometry. When two angles, when two objects coincide, fit perfectly together. That's miraculous, right? That those things fit together just perfectly. To remember that that is a wow moment. That when things appear upon our path, they're not happenstance. They're not random. They're miraculous. It's all miraculous. The fact that we're here. As Wayne Dyer says, you're the sperm that won the race. You are miraculous. It's miraculous. What were Steve Jobs' final words when leaving this world? Recorded by his sister, a great article, Google it. His final words were, "Oh wow, oh wow, oh wow." And then he died. The question would be, of course, what is he looking at? What is he seeing? What is he experiencing? And maybe the answer was just life. Existence is an oh wow moment. There's no word in the Jewish mystical tradition for coincidence, or synchronicity is another word. Why? Because you only have words to explain things that you're utilizing, that you're familiar with. And the mystics weren't familiar with this idea of coincidence or synchronicity, because to them, that would be an anomaly. That would be like a one-off, that something that happens randomly. And from a mystical perspective, in all traditions, or most traditions, you don't need the word because it's all coinciding. It's all synchronistic, happening in unison, in rhythm, in purpose. And so you don't need a word to describe it because it's all coinciding. It's all synchronistic. It's all miraculous. Last moment on this idea. Moses, walking in the desert, sees this bush that's described as a bush on fire not being consumed. And that's where he meets the divine. And that's where his journey begins as a mystic and all that he sets forth in the book of the Exodus. But what's interesting is the commentators on that say, what's miraculous isn't that Moses noticed the burning bush. In Hebrew, it's called a sneh. That's not the miraculous part. What they say is miraculous is how many other people walked right past that bush and didn't notice it was burning and not being consumed. It just kept burning and burning. How long would you have to sit there and wait and pay attention and be mindful of it to notice that it's on fire, but it's not being consumed? We just had a little campfire on our last RV trip and threw in a bunch of wood, of course, into a fire pit. And, like you can put in enough wood that it's going to take some time that you notice that, hey, this thing is burning down. You really got to sit there. How much time to realize that the ordinary is extraordinary, right? That the natural is supernatural. And it's that defining difference, that mindfulness, that consciousness that transforms the ordinary person into the Moses, into the mystic. Or, I'll end with this, as the mystics say, the Hebrew word for burning bush, sneh, flipped around is nes, and nes means miracle. And all along it was miraculous, but it was the great mystic Moses that realized the ordinary is actually extraordinary and paid attention. And the great mystic in you that goes out into the world and sees that when you're thinking of somebody and they call you, when you hear a song on the radio and you were just asking, this happens to me with my dad, asking for a sign from my dad, and he's a Simon and Garfunkel guy, he was, and Sounds of Silence was his song, and boom, it comes on the radio. All these synchronicities, these coincidences happening all day, every day. Can we see the burning bush and realize that it is truly miraculous? That is how we utilize signs to help us move forward in our growth and on our journey to live an oh wow, oh wow, oh wow, not just kind of death, but kind of life. Jump over to mysoulcenter.org and you can learn more about this. You can follow the journey this week, and on coincidences, I have a few more blogs and vlogs and all kinds of stuff for you. So jump over there and visit Ariella and myself. Until the next time, shalom, salam, namaste. Peace.